marketers are imperfectionists. We do not like perfection because there is no marketing system that ever gets 100 out of 100. If I'm a perfectionist, I'm not going to be a marketer. That funnel over there, 100 come in at the top, and what do you notice about the top? The top is bigger than the bottom. 100 go in, 100 never come out. You might get 1 out the bottom, or 2 or 3, and that's okay. Because if I can get 3 out the bottom and I put 100 in, and I know that happens every single time, if I want to get 100 out the bottom, I know exactly how many I have to put in the top. You see what I'm saying? So getting a small result is not a big deal, but what I can't do is I can't get perfect results because I would have to be a perfectionist, and it's really impossible. So marketers are imperfectionists, and what drives our decision making is not what I think about the thing that I'm creating, it's what the other person thinks. I'm not receiving whatever ministry you're creating, you're not the consumer of the ministry. So you're not the person who ultimately decides if it meets a need or not. You might have an opinion, but my opinion when I create a web page is largely irrelevant. The question is, do the people like it and do they engage with it? Because if the answer is no, then my opinion was just probably wrong. And so here, feedback determines what is not effective. What this means is, as we mentioned earlier, I want to create, if I'm going to offer a new product or a new service or a new ministry, whatever it is, minimum viable product. I want to get the bare bones of that idea together so it functions enough to get the idea across, and I want to know what someone else has to say about it. Now, setting the system up correctly, if we're trying to perfect it before we ever let anybody see it, the really, really crazy thing that most people miss is that perfecting the system doesn't necessarily give you good results, okay? And so as an example, I worked with a Christian organization, built out their whole marketing funnel, built them some really complex systems, and I said, let's launch it out there so we can start making those revisions so we can get feedback and we can start optimizing and changing it. They said, no, we can't launch it. And I said, well, why? Well, because we have to review it. We have to review it for grammar. We have to review it for branding and punctuation and spelling, and everything has to be perfect before we put it out. And you know how long it took them to review all of this? About 3 months. And in 3 months, I could have spent $30,000. They had a grant that Google gives, and Google gives free advertising, $10,000 a month to nonprofit organizations. They could have spent $30,000 and had 20,000 people through to their website telling us what they liked and didn't like instead of us guessing. So we spent 3 months making it perfect, and we launched it, and nobody liked it because the spelling doesn't meet the felt need. Nobody cares about spelling. I've got like 3 typos in here, by the way. I saw those, and I'm like, okay, I can't be too upset about it. But yeah, the spelling, the punctuation, the branding, nobody cares about that. So you can make it perfect, and it still won't work. But if you have typos, and you happen to find out that their deepest felt need is they're struggling with finances and they want to have a Christian financial course, they don't care about your typos. They'll sign up 15 out of 100. You'll be super successful. So we just want to get to that point faster. Question 2 here. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit ahead. On your paper, what do we sometimes expect to have perfect in your ministry before we take it to people? What do we expect? Do we expect to have things perfect a lot of times before we take it to people for fear of what they might think if it's not good enough? So maybe write some ideas in your own ministry there on question 2. Now, I shared with you personal experience. One of the ways that you can keep your efforts imperfect, because the question is, if I struggle with making it all perfect, how do I keep it imperfect? Like, it's just right or it's wrong. How do I do that? So the 80-20 rule, you have a whole page of this in your notes. By the way, if you look at your notes, the 80-20 rule will be in the marketing psychology, how marketers think. In here, you have a whole page on 80-20. Now, the 80-20 rule was sort of thought up by a gentleman named Pareto. It's called Pareto's Law. And what it says is that 20% of your input gets you 80% of your output. And this is incredibly important. I organize my entire career around the 80-20 principle in terms of what I spend time on. This means that 20% of my inputs get me 80% of my outputs. That means 20% of my effort gets me 80% of the results. So if I want to create a new ministry, a new product, a new service, and I want a bare bones minimum viable product that I can crank out in one day, 20% of my time is all it takes to get the 80% of the result. And if it doesn't work, here's what I can do. It took me 20% of time to see if I met a need. I can try to meet needs 5 times in the time it would take one perfectionist to try to meet one need. So I can test and see, what do people need? And I can give 5 shots in the time someone else has 1 shot. And that means I can meet needs much more quickly and much more efficiently. And this can also be applied, you'll see in your handout as well, this can be applied to your time. 20% of the time you put in something gets you 80% of whatever you put your time to. 20% of your ministries bring in 80% of the new visitors. So if you can figure out, and you look at the numbers, I know Pastor Andrew's going to be talking about numbers this afternoon. If you can track the numbers and see which ministries bring in the most people, you can say, we could get 80% of the new people and save 80% of the time just by knowing the numbers. So if 20% of your ministries gets you 80% of your incoming people and you are too overwhelmed with things going on, you can legitimately stop doing the other 80% of the ineffective ministries and still have the 80% coming in from those 20 ministries. You see what I'm saying? Highly, highly optimize your efforts and your time. And what you can do then is you can reinvest the time you just spent by eliminating the ineffective ministries and putting it into the ones you know work, because they're way more effective. So now you get exponential growth just because you know what 20% is giving you 80% of the results. Okay, great. One example of this, I recently launched 2 digital courses to church leaders and nonprofits online. If you imagine doing college online, the platforms are very similar, just to kind of give you a mental idea. But this training is one of them. Now, I launched this training into sort of the online course area where pastors are and nonprofit leaders are and business people are. And right now, and this is in terms of meeting needs and in terms of 80-20, what's more effective? Right now, I launched this, the last time we were together, I launched this out, and it looks like I've got a 3-day window to kind of get this launch. It looks like it will be somewhere around 1,500 student signups in 3 days, okay? Which is great, Now, I launched a different one over the weekend, and this one was about that grant, that Google grant. They give $10,000 of free advertising every month to nonprofits. That got over 7,500 signups in 3 days. So they're both great, but it seems like the course about the Google grant is meeting a bigger need than the course to church leaders on marketing. Now, that's not to say this isn't important, but of the 2 courses, if I have an audience of 7,500 on one that came in 3 days and an audience of 1,500 on the other, which one am I going to prioritize the extra effort to perfect? The one that's got the largest demand. It met the biggest need. And it kind of makes sense because you have nonprofit organizations that have not, it's coronavirus. There has been no help for nonprofit organizations, grants for businesses, not for nonprofits. And this Google grant is one thing that they can use to help support them. So it makes sense that right now there is a huge demand for that. And I had no idea when I launched that could be the case. But after I saw the numbers, I said, what would be causing this? Oh, it's meeting a really big need. That's why I have more signups. And I wouldn't have known that unless I just tried 2. If I had only tried the one, I would have only gotten the results of one. So use the 80-20 principle when designing ministries and trying to find people's deeply felt needs.
Don't stop now. We have tons of other videos for you to watch and learn how to reach more people more effectively. If you loved this video and you don't want to miss out on what we have coming up for you next, go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell to keep up to date on our newest content. If you'd like to work with Clickmill personally, head on over to clickmill.co where you can learn more about our proven marketing strategies. I look forward to seeing you in the very next video.